Prince William believed he had already faced every possible battle over his mother's legacy. Then a sealed proposal arrived bearing Meghan's name and a demand no one inside the palace had expected. She was seeking control of Diana's Forbidden Memorial Foundation, a private charitable project deliberately kept beyond public reach. As William read the final paragraph, his expression changed. This was not simply a request. To him, it felt like an attempted seizure of something sacred. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William sat through the briefing at Windsor Castle without speaking, but the silence grew heavier with every page. The Diana Memorial Foundation, a dormant charitable body created to preserve unfinished humanitarian plans linked to his late mother, had remained inactive because its charter limited involvement to her sons and trustees chosen before her death. That restriction mattered because it kept her name beyond commercial pressure and family rivalry. It also gave the prince one place where Diana's work remained protected from the battles surrounding her memory. Meghan's documented proposal asked for more than permission to help. She wanted leadership authority, the right to appoint new trustees, and the power to launch a campaign under Diana's name. The Duchess described the late princess as a guiding force in her journey, yet barely acknowledged William's place as the eldest son guarding that legacy. He stopped halfway through the file, returned to the opening page, and read it again. Anger replaced disbelief. The future king no longer saw a charitable request. He saw a challenge to his family, his grief, and his duty. A hidden appendix sharpened the danger. One handwritten note from a palace legal advisor warned that a forgotten clause in the original charter might allow an outside participant to seek temporary control if one of Diana's sons supported the application. William's hand tightened around the page, because only one person could make that clause powerful: Harry. The possibility cut deeper than the threat. It suggested that Meghan had not acted alone, and that the fracture between the brothers might already be shaping the claim. The door opened before William could issue an order. An aide informed him that Meghan had requested a meeting and expected an answer before palace lawyers could close the loophole. He placed the proposal flat on the table and spoke. "No one claims my mother's legacy." Yet he understood the confrontation ahead would not be about paperwork. The document had stunned him, but the deeper wound would come from discovering why Meghan believed Diana's legacy belonged within her reach at all. For William, Diana was not an icon, a symbol, or a brand. She was the mother whose absence had shaped every major decision of his adult life. For Meghan, however, the late princess had become something different, a source of identification, emotional validation, and public power. Their conflict was never going to remain legal. Beneath every clause and signature rested a far more dangerous question: who had the right to define what Diana's life meant? William remained alone after the briefing, holding an old photograph whose edges had softened with time. His thumb moved across his mother's face as memories returned. Not grand ceremonies, but quiet conversations about homeless families, children's hospitals, and landmine victims whose suffering she refused to ignore. The Diana Memorial Foundation, a protected charitable body designed to preserve her unfinished humanitarian goals, mattered because it carried work she had wanted, separated from royal image-making. It also mattered because the prince believed guarding it was one of the last duties he could still perform for her. Meghan prepared for the coming meeting with a very different conviction. She told Harry in a private recorded conversation kept by her legal team that years of comparison with Diana had left her carrying both admiration and pain. The Duchess wanted to turn that connection into action through campaigns involving women's rights, mental health, racial equality, and global media outreach. She believed the foundation could become more than a memorial. It could become a living force. Yet Harry heard something else beneath her certainty: a need to prove that the suffering she had endured inside royal life had given her a special claim to the woman whose shadow followed them all. Harry understood William's anger because he had spent his own life protecting the same memories. Still, the Duke also believed Meghan had faced public hostility that echoed the pressure once surrounding their mother. That belief trapped him between loyalty to his wife and loyalty to his brother. Every path carried betrayal. Supporting her risked reopening the deepest wound in the family. Refusing her risked confirming that she would never be allowed near the legacy she believed had helped her survive. William's fear sharpened when a confidential palace note surfaced inside the documented Foundation archive. The record showed Diana had once discussed an independent charitable trust operating outside direct royal control. Meghan viewed those words as proof that her proposal reflected the princess's rebellious instincts. The future king saw them differently. To him, an unfinished idea was not permission. Then William reached the final page of the briefing. Harry had privately supported opening negotiations. The discovery struck harder than Meghan's claim, because it transformed a dispute over charity into another fracture between two brothers, already divided by years of resentment. Yet the proposal had not grown from admiration alone. One private incident months earlier had convinced Meghan that the foundation was hers to pursue. The confrontation began long before the document reached Windsor. Its true origin lay in a private memorial ceremony held 6 months earlier, when a locked archive, an unfinished speech, and one careless sentence changed everything. Until that evening, Meghan had spoken about Diana's influence in emotional terms. Afterward, she began speaking in legal ones. Those present would later remember that moment as the instant admiration hardened into intention, and intention became a threat. William entered Kensington Palace expecting a quiet tribute, not the beginning of another family war. Harry walked beside Meghan as a small group of trustees gathered to mark an anniversary of Diana's humanitarian work. The trustees were the appointed guardians responsible for protecting the foundation's purpose and rules. Their presence mattered because they held records the palace could not simply rewrite, while the location carried its own pain. Kensington had been Diana's home, and every discussion about her legacy touched memories neither son had fully escaped. The archivist opened a secured folder and presented an unfinished speech, preserved from Diana's private papers. In the documented draft, she imagined creating a foundation able to work beyond the boundaries of palace permission. The words changed the room. Meghan leaned forward and asked whether the proposed body had ever been legally dissolved. One trustee answered carefully that it had only been suspended, not abolished. That single sentence gave her something emotion alone never could: a possible legal opening. William saw the change in her expression. He reached across the table, closed the folder, and warned everyone that an unfinished speech could not be treated as an approved command. The prince understood why that distinction mattered. Diana had explored countless ideas, but preserving every thought as a binding wish would allow others to choose the version of her that served them best. He then added that her legacy belonged first to her sons, words meant as protection, but received as rejection. Meghan felt the humiliation immediately. She turned toward Harry, waiting for him to challenge his brother, yet the Duke remained silent. His hesitation wounded her more than William's warning, because she believed her husband understood what it meant to be pushed outside the palace circle. Harry lowered his eyes, trapped between defending his wife and admitting that his brother's fear was not entirely wrong. The corridor later carried the anger they had hidden inside the ceremony. Meghan confronted Harry without aides present and told him the palace was preserving Diana as a memory while refusing to complete the work she had wanted to begin. He asked her to let the matter rest, but she answered that silence was exactly how unfinished legacies disappeared. Mourning changed everything. Meghan contacted an independent legal team through a recorded conference call and ordered a full examination of the suspended foundation. That decision began the challenge now sitting on William's desk. With the proposal exposed and the brothers divided, He could no longer avoid the meeting she had spent 6 months preparing to demand. No cameras recorded the meeting. No aides were allowed inside. Only William, Meghan, Harry, and a single sealed copy of the disputed charter sat behind the closed door. What began with measured voices quickly became something far more painful. Meghan insisted she wanted to protect Diana's purpose. William accused her of trying to possess it. Then Harry spoke, and the argument stopped being about charity. It became a reckoning between a family and its oldest wound. William placed Meghan's proposal in the center of the table and asked the question without softening a single word. Did she intend to take operational control of the Memorial Foundation? The term meant the power to direct its daily work, appoint decision-makers, and control how Diana's name would be used. That authority mattered because whoever held it could reshape the late princess's unfinished mission. It also mattered because the foundation stood at the center of a private family grief that had never fully healed. Meghan answered without hesitation. She wanted the project activated internationally, and she believed the palace had allowed fear, tradition, and years of family conflict to bury work Diana had wanted completed. The Duchess argued that women's rights, mental health, and humanitarian campaigns could give the foundation a living purpose. William heard ambition where she claimed to offer service. He asked why support was not enough. She replied that symbolic involvement would leave the same people in control who had kept the foundation silent. The room broke open when Meghan compared her treatment by the press with Diana's suffering. William pushed his chair back sharply and warned her never to use his mother's pain as a path to personal authority. The prince's anger came from more than insult. He had watched public fascination turn Diana's life into a weapon, and he feared the same force would now consume her legacy. Meghan refused to retreat, insisting that shared suffering did not make her a thief. Harry finally intervened. The Duke told his brother that protection had become an excuse for preventing anyone else from acting in Diana's name. William stared at him, wounded by the accusation. Then Meghan produced a documented letter written by one of the princess's original advisors, suggesting that future spouses of her sons might one day contribute to the foundation's work. William answered with a later memorandum preserved in the same archive. The document stated that no public campaign should proceed unless both sons agreed. Silence followed. The future king closed the charter, looked directly at Harry, and asked whether he was prepared to oppose his own brother publicly in support of Meghan's claim. Harry did not answer. Yet his silence could not delay the truth for long, because final authority belonged neither to him nor William. It rested with the quiet guardians of the foundation's hidden charter. The palace could issue statements, the brothers could trade accusations, and Meghan could assemble the strongest legal case imaginable. None of it would matter, unless one woman opened the foundation's original register. Lady Eleanor Ashcombe had guarded Diana's private wishes for nearly 3 decades. She had rejected royal pressure, avoided public interviews, and refused every attempt to turn the princess's name into a weapon. Now William needed her decision, and Meghan intended to reach her first. William arrived at Eleanor's home without advisors or ceremony. She held the only authenticated copy of the foundation's complete charter, the formal document setting out who could control the charity and how its power could be transferred. That authority mattered, because several confidential amendments had been withheld from palace records. It mattered even more because Eleanor had made Diana a personal promise. The foundation would never become a tool for royal image management, family revenge, celebrity branding, or commercial expansion. The future king waited beside a cold fireplace as Eleanor read Meghan's proposal in complete silence. His position as heir offered no protection from the anxiety tightening across his face. He finally told her that his mother's memory was being pulled toward another public conflict. Eleanor closed the file and answered with quiet force. Grief, she said, did not automatically create ownership. William felt the words strike deep, because they forced him to confront a possibility he had avoided. that protecting Diana might have slowly become an excuse to control everything connected to her. A letter arrived before he could respond. Meghan had written directly to Eleanor, describing in a documented personal account how Diana's example helped her survive isolation, public condemnation, and separation from royal life. The Duchess insisted she was not trying to steal a legacy. She wanted to continue work she believed the palace had allowed to disappear. Eleanor read the final lines twice, while William watched without interrupting. Meghan's pain did not prove her right to control the foundation, but it made dismissing her as merely ambitious far more difficult. Eleanor then opened the original register and revealed the clause both sides had failed to understand. The unanimity safeguard required both of Diana's sons to approve any transfer of authority. In plain terms, William and Harry could each nominate participants, but neither brother could hand control to another person without the other's written consent. Meghan could not seize the foundation through Harry alone. William could not close it forever through his own authority either. The decision should have ended the danger, but Eleanor refused to invalidate Meghan's proposal. She summoned William, Harry, and the Duchess to a final trustee hearing, where grief, loyalty, and ambition would be turned into permanent choices. The safeguard had prevented a sudden takeover, yet it also forced Harry to choose openly, and the consequences began before the hearing even started. By the following morning, secrecy had collapsed. Palace staff knew a battle was underway. Advisors began preparing rival statements, charitable partners froze planned announcements, and old resentments returned with brutal speed. William had wanted the matter contained, yet defending Diana's foundation now threatened to drag her name into another royal spectacle. Across the Atlantic, Meghan faced a different shock. The campaign she believed would prove her purpose was isolating her from the person whose support she needed most. William acted before the leak could spread further. A partial version of Meghan's proposal had reached senior palace staff, raising fears that Diana's charitable legacy would become the center of an international public relations war. The prince ordered every foundation document secured and suspended all external discussions until the trustee hearing reached a decision. That hearing was the formal meeting where the foundation's guardians would rule on control. The delay mattered because one careless statement could damage future charitable partnerships, while a public family battle could reduce Diana's humanitarian work to another royal scandal. Catherine found William after midnight, standing silently in his study, still dressed from the day. She watched his hands tremble, as he admitted he felt he was failing to protect his mother. The princess understood that his fear was not only about losing control of a foundation. He believed every new conflict pulled Diana further away from the private woman he remembered, and closer to the public symbol others wanted to use. Catherine told him protection could not become destruction, but he could not yet see where one ended and the other began. Meghan reacted with anger when her advisors warned that demanding control instead of requesting participation could make her motives appear personal. The Duchess insisted the mission mattered more than appearances, yet the warning cut deeply because she had built the proposal to prove she could create something meaningful from years of pain. Harry then withdrew from a planned media appearance and told her privately that supporting her causes did not mean helping dismantle a safeguard their mother had created. The crisis deepened when trustees uncovered discussions with a commercial production company about documenting the foundation's relaunch. William believed Meghan had hidden the talks. She denied agreeing to exploit Diana's name and said the conversations had never moved beyond an early concept. Still, Harry's expression changed. Doubt had entered the one place where she needed complete trust. Hours before the hearing, the Duke opened the legal file and removed his support letter. Meghan watched without speaking, as her strongest path to authority disappeared. That single withdrawal shattered her strategy, yet it also created the first honest conversation between husband and wife since the conflict began. There were no lawyers in the room, no palace officials waiting beyond the door, and no public statement ready to soften what had to be said. Harry and Meghan sat opposite each other, with the unsigned support letter between them. For years, they had survived by presenting a united front against every challenge. This time, unity demanded something harder than loyalty. It demanded truth. Harry had to explain why defending his wife could no longer mean surrendering every boundary connected to his mother. Harry broke the silence first. He told Meghan he believed in the causes she wanted to champion, but he could not support her attempt to control a foundation Diana had deliberately protected from individual ownership. The safeguard mattered, because it stopped any one person from turning her legacy into private power. It also protected both brothers from making permanent decisions while driven by grief, anger, or pressure. The Duke had spent years accusing the palace of using rules to shut people out. Now he understood that this rule had been created to keep everyone, including him, from claiming too much. Meghan looked at the withdrawn letter and asked why he had encouraged her research if he planned to stand beside William in the end. Hurt replaced anger. She reminded him that he had spoken about completing Diana's unfinished work and had supported the first legal discussions. The Duchess believed his retreat proved that royal loyalty would always return when she needed him most. Harry did not deny his earlier support. Instead, he admitted that he had confused shared pain with shared entitlement. The confession changed the room. Harry explained that his anger toward the royal family had distorted the purpose of his mother's safeguards. He had wanted to believe anyone who suffered as Diana suffered had earned a place inside her legacy. But pain, he said, could create understanding without creating ownership. Meghan listened without interrupting, yet every word widened the distance between them. Meghan slowly removed her engagement ring and placed it beside the proposal. She asked whether Diana's memory would always be used as a wall she could never cross. Harry stared at the ring, then answered that participation was possible, but control was not. Their mother's legacy had to remain larger than William's grief, Meghan's ambition, and his own resentment. Otherwise, the foundation would become exactly what Diana feared, a prize inside a family war. Silence held them for several long moments. Then Meghan agreed to withdraw her demand for executive authority if the trustees considered a separate humanitarian partnership without ownership of Diana's name. Harry signed a new documented statement supporting collaboration under strict trustee control. The compromise preserved their marriage, but it ended her original claim. The private decision changed the legal outcome. Yet once the story escaped into public view, the world judged Meghan's motives and William's reaction in ways neither could control. At dawn, the conflict escaped the palace entirely. A newspaper front page appeared across London, with Diana's portrait divided between images of William and Meghan beneath one brutal headline: "Who owns her legacy?" Within hours, broadcasters were debating grief, ambition, race, royal control, and the dangerous power of a dead princess's name. Yet the most powerful reaction did not come from a studio. It came from an elderly woman standing silently outside Kensington Palace with a single handwritten message. The London Chronicle pushed the dispute into every conversation. Its split-image front page presented the crisis as a battle between Diana's eldest son and the daughter-in-law who had long identified with her public suffering. That framing mattered, because it reduced a private legal conflict to a moral choice the public could understand. It also threatened both sides. William risked appearing possessive, while Meghan risked looking as though she had turned personal pain into a claim over royal memory. A national broadcaster sharpened the divide by asking whether Diana's legacy should remain protected by her family or be transformed into an international activist institution. The term meant a global organization built to drive public campaigns rather than preserve a private memorial purpose. Commentators argued over who had the right to continue her work, but outside Kensington Palace, one quiet act, carried more force than hours of debate. An elderly woman stepped through the small crowd near the memorial gates and placed white roses beside a handwritten card. It read, "She belonged to her sons, but her compassion belonged to everyone." The message spread within minutes. Some people saw it as a defense of William. Others believed it supported Meghan's desire to make Diana's work active again. Its power came from refusing to choose ownership at all. William watched the footage and became visibly emotional. The prince understood that his private grief had become part of a national argument, and that every attempt to protect his mother could now be interpreted as an attempt to control her. Meghan faced a harsher moment. A commentator accused her of treating royal memory as personal currency. The Duchess switched off the television before the discussion ended, but the words had already reached her. The trustees finally released a documented public statement. No individual would receive ownership, branding rights, or unilateral control over the foundation. The announcement also confirmed that Meghan had withdrawn her original claim and accepted consideration for a limited humanitarian partnership under strict supervision. Public anger began to soften. What had looked like a takeover now appeared closer to a painful retreat, while William's resistance seemed less like victory and more like fear of losing his mother again. With the public battle finally quieting, he and Meghan entered the last meeting, knowing the foundation would survive, but their relationship might not. The final hearing lasted less than an hour. There were no raised voices, no dramatic accusations, and no attempt to reopen wounds that had already cut too deeply. William arrived carrying the original charter. Meghan brought a revised proposal with Diana's name removed from its title. Harry carried nothing. By the time they left, no one had won possession of the late princess's legacy. Instead, all three were forced to accept the truth Diana's safeguards had protected from the beginning. Lady Eleanor opened the hearing with a ruling that ended the original claim. Meghan would receive no leadership, ownership, branding authority, or executive power over the Diana Memorial Foundation. The foundation was the independent charitable body, created to preserve Diana's humanitarian principles without allowing one person to control her name. That protection mattered because public memory could easily become private influence. It also mattered because the conflict had already pushed two brothers, one marriage, and the monarchy itself toward another painful fracture. The trustees preserved the dormant foundation under the unanimity safeguard, the rule requiring both of Diana's sons to approve any transfer of authority. William signed the ruling without celebration. Victory felt too close to grief. The prince had protected the charter, but he had also seen how fear of losing his mother again had made him suspicious of every person who approached her legacy. Meghan accepted the decision with quiet restraint. She acknowledged in a documented statement presented to the trustees that her desire to prove herself had pushed her toward authority when cooperation would have carried greater meaning. The Duchess then accepted a place on a separate advisory initiative supporting women and displaced families, but Diana's name would not be used to promote it. She had lost the claim, yet she had not lost the chance to serve. Harry turned toward William before the hearing ended. The Duke apologized for allowing years of anger to turn their mother's memory into another battlefield. His brother admitted that grief had hardened into control, and that protection without trust could become another kind of prison. Neither man erased the past, but both finally stopped using Diana as a shield against each other. The final gesture carried more weight than any ruling. William closed the original charter and handed it back to Lady Eleanor instead of taking it to the palace. By surrendering the document, the future king proved that even he would not personally possess what Diana intended to remain independent. The verdict was complete. Meghan's claim failed. William's power was restrained. Harry chose honesty over resentment. The foundation survived because it belonged to no prince, no duchess, and no monarchy. Diana's legacy endured precisely because no one was allowed to own it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.